you're going to feel like your angles and math are off when you may actually be spot on. That's going to cause you to adjust or not have confidence in your bank shots, and then when you adjust, you may actually hit it the right way, and you miss the shot completely. Alright, welcome to video 5. Video 5 is going to cover bank shots, and I want to be very clear with you that if your strategy revolves around bank shots in Tavern League, you are screwed. Every single table that you will play at has a different roll, different rail age. I mean, you're never going to be able to hit the same shot twice. There's oftentimes one rail is more dead, some rails are bouncy or working. You got to remember you're hitting a piece of rubber. I mean, inside that rail is a piece of rubber, so if you hit into there and it's a dead rail, it's just going to absorb almost all the impact and slowly drift off. So it will change your bank shot. You could be perfectly on in all your math, you could be just the best bank shot person in the world on a straight table or even on your home table because you're used to your rails and your roll on your table. And then you go into a bar on a table you've never played before, and you do everything you're supposed to do, and maybe you even shot it right, and then you miss. So what that does is, even though you may have a bank shot that you could make 99% of the time at your house or on a straight table, when you go to an unknown table, that shot could become 25 to 50% chance, but you won't know it. So you won't actually be mentally preparing to where you leave the cue ball because you're planning on making that shot. Whenever you're playing on a table that you're not used to or not familiar with, if it's been a while, always go there and practice a few games. Don't just take regular shots, do bank shots. Hit the cue ball around, hit every rail and see how dead it is. It may not matter to you because you're not at that good of a shooting level, but come down to crunch time when you're on that last shot and maybe, you know, it's a 7-7 match and you need to win that game, you might remember, hey, this rail's dead. And even if it's a home bar, I mean, people in bars sometimes will move the tables for dances, like we have DJs coming, sometimes they'll move the table for maintenance, sometimes they'll put shit on it for like a banquet. So now that you understand that you are hitting a ball into rubber and the state of that rubber varies, that rail could be attached by glue loose. Usually they're screwed in. Maybe the screws are loose. Maybe it's old. Who knows? So even if your math is perfectly correct, I hope you understand at this point that it's table specific. So let's talk about the dot system for real. So let's switch to the view here. Everybody knows that if you shoot from about here to this dot, it's a halfway point. It'll go in this pocket. So the mistake that people make when they start to practice this stuff is they fail to realize that the cue ball actually hits the rail here, not back here. So if you use the front of this pocket, well, through here we'll just draw. If you use this line right here to gauge your shot, the center of the pocket, and you aim at this, where does your cue ball hit? Well, it hits right here, which is before the actual halfway point of the table. If you use this line, you have to use this line right through here. Okay? So if you're going to use the front of the pockets, it's about the middle of these corner pockets. If you're going to use that when you aim, you have to come out from here. You have to come out and realize that this is where the cue ball is hitting. Because if you use the front of this pocket, but then you go back and use this diamond or circle, whatever's there, you're hitting here. And where does that leave you? Well, if you go halfway out from there, you know, maybe you're somewhere in here. Let's see, what is that? Alright, so what we want to do is use the actual dots if we're going to use the dot system. You can use up here if you want, but just make sure that you aim here. It's going to look different because it's going to feel like you're aiming, you know, over here. But realize where you're making contact, and it's got to be equal to make this halving system work, this rail, this mirror system work. You have to use the same line on each side. So just keep that in mind. Whichever system you use, if you use the front of the pockets, like the front of the rail system is here and here, then you have to remember that the ball hits your circle there. So the ball's hitting here. So when you make your lines, and you're coming from the center of this pocket, just realize if you were to come through, it's actually going to come onto the other side. A lot of people don't realize that that slight off could make a huge difference. So what they end up doing, and this is what I was telling you about stroke power before, is they'll use the front of this pocket, and they will aim at this diamond or circle, but they will compensate for actually hitting the rail here by developing a shot that's softer. When you hit a softer shot, most of the momentum is absorbed by the rail, so it causes it to come off wide. Where if this was true math and you hit like a nice hard shot here, this is what you'd actually do every time you try to make the shot. But because people have developed a softer shot to make this seam straight, they're actually compensating for bad math. You can do perfectly fine developing a softer shot that actually widens, and so it will come on this angle, then come out at a wider angle, and you'll make banks. You can develop that, and that's fine. If you're a beginning player, you're probably going to use the front of the pocket, and you're going to aim at that, and you're going to hit this bank short every time and wonder what's wrong. So just remember that if you're going to do a true bank and you're using the front, then also use the front here when you aim. So this is your new diamond, basically. You're actually going to aim to the center here, where this actually is, to get here on a very medium stroke. And you can see that that center, it actually puts you, you know, out here somewhere, so you'd be aiming long. So that's how the dot system works. So then what I was saying is that when you hit balls harder, so let's just pretend that we're using, we'll just pretend that we're using the back of this pocket and we're aiming, right? And we're going to pretend for now that aiming at that makes this go right into this pocket every time, right? This solely depends on how hard you hit the ball. So what we're trying to develop is a shot speed that will make this a true statement almost every time. So when you hit a ball harder, it actually doesn't get as absorbed into this rail. So when it comes off, it still has a lot of speed coming off. So it ends up shortening the angle, I guess is the way to put it. And what that does is the harder you hit it, the more to this side, a shorter angle it comes off. And you can actually hit this hard enough where it can come down and miss this entire pocket. So hitting it hard will move you this way. On the flip side of that, hitting it soft widens the angle because most of it's absorbed, it doesn't come off as fast. So when you hit a ball soft, you'll start to see this effect happen. You can hit it soft and it will still go in, but eventually if you hit it soft enough, it's going to start going toward that rail. So what you're looking for is a hard shot that still gets in this pocket and a soft enough shot that gets into the pocket. There's a range of intensity between soft and hard, so you have some leeway where you'll still be able to get into this pocket. So your goal is to be able to hit within that range every time so that you can at least get into that pocket. Call that your medium or average stroke. You want to take that cue ball and you want to work on that shot and try to figure out what your medium stroke is. And it's different for every table depending on how that rail responds. And that's what I'm saying about banks. On a perfect table, you'll be able to hit that same intensity. If you're playing in the pros or on like nice tables, diamond tables, and everything's functioning, you'll be able to hit that same intensity every time and make that bank. Some rails don't work like that. If they're loose or there's something wrong with them, it's going to change on every table. So that's why you want to bank off every rail, either in practice or play before you play a match. Because even this rail right here, if you do get the intensity where this shot's true, and you find like how hard you have to hit it off the rail, this rail over here could be significantly different as all these other ones. So you'll have to test every rail to truly know how hard you have to hit it. Now, like I said, there is leeway. So a lot of people will just go out there and they'll hit the shot and make it because of this leeway. So if you develop an average, very consistent bank shot from this distance, then even if the rail is loose or harder, you'll still be hitting it like it's a softer, harder shot. So that's why you want to really control your banking speed. Alright, so how does English affect the rails? If you do not hit the center of the cue ball, that is somewhere, say this is the cue ball, and you're not hitting directly somewhere in the center here, when you hit that rail or when you hit the cue ball, it's going to come off the rail different. For example, if you hit the right side of the cue ball anywhere, it's going to cause this cue ball shot to come here. The English is going to catch on this rail and it's going to shorten it this way. And you can actually use that to your advantage. Sometimes in matches you'll hit out here, but if you put enough right on it, it will still come straight down here even though that math is off. So a new player is not really going to be thinking about that. Just know that that English really affects. If you accidentally hit the cue ball over here, even with your math being right, it's going to come out this way further. Okay? And the effect that the English has depends on how much spin you get on the ball and how hard you hit it. If you hit English on this really hard, it has less of an effect. If you hit English on it soft, you can actually hit the right side of this ball, and I'll probably show you in a video. If you were to hit, let's say it's downright, So if you were to hit downright really slow but with enough spin, you can actually cause the cue ball to come straight off, or even this way, come right back at you with enough spin and hit it slow enough. So that's how much English can affect the shot. And the same goes for even if you hit the top or the bottom. If you hit the top, it causes it to hit into the rail, and then it wants to roll forward again. So what does that do? It's like you get a double hit, a double tap it. It causes it to reabsorb back into the rail, which makes your shot longer. The opposite is true. If you hit English into a rail on the bottom, you get this effect. It comes off faster. English can be used to manipulate different shots, but when you're an average player, we want to really be hitting toward the center of the cue ball. Even if you hit off to the right a little bit, off to the left, and you get some type of spin on the ball, it's going to hit into this rail and it's going to change the direction of the ball. So we want to be center enough where, you know, if we hit perfectly straight and it was going to come this way, because of how big the pockets are, you can be slightly off and still make the ball. And that's really what we're trying to focus on, is consistency here. Let's say we're going to start banking balls. So when you hit this ball, it transfers energy into it, and then it comes off. So as you hit the cue ball, you also want this ball here to be rolling about that medium stroke speed for this angle. You want it to be rolling just like the cue ball. The difficulty is that the closer that this ball gets to the rail here, if it gets closer to the rail, it doesn't have a chance to actually roll. So the closer the ball is to the rail, the more careful you have to be, because it comes off the rail at different speeds. So if you've ever noticed like a shot that's right next to the rail, even if you hit it perfectly into here, you'll notice sometimes it comes short, or sometimes you'll kiss and it'll come long, but it doesn't always come off the rail like you think it would. There is math involved that's beyond even my understanding of the game, but for shots like this, sometimes you gotta like overcompensate, because it's going to hit into the rail harder than you anticipate. When people try to make banks where the ball's close to the rail, sometimes they hit it too hard. So what happens when you hit it too hard? Well, it shortens the angle. So sometimes you're not actually aiming the ball here. It's not going to do any good. You actually have to aim a little bit to the left in this example, because it's going to shorten the angle and throw it down here. Where if you were to hit just average, it would actually come out here. Practice different shots. Try doing different banks, even on that same line, so they're straight in banks, but at different spots, and see how, when you hit the cue ball into that ball, how it reacts, and then go from there. Sometimes you got to hit softer, sometimes you got to compensate by hitting further down the rail, and you'll be able to figure that out rather quickly. Now that we understand how English affects the cue ball when it hits the rail, you have to also understand that the opposite effect happens when you hit the cue ball with English into this ball. So if I were to hit low left on this ball, let me get some colors in here so you can see. So let's just say that I hit low left on this ball, right? So I hit this cue ball with low left. As this ball starts to rotate, it actually puts the opposite spin on this ball. When it spins, like gears coming together, if this ball is spinning this way, it's going to cause the other ball to spin the opposite way. If you hit the left side of the cue ball, where remember when I said the cue ball would come off and then it would cause it to throw it here, the opposite happens when you make contact with this ball. This ball is going to act like you hit it with right English. So once you hit left into here, it's going to cause it to spin this way. It's going to hit the rail, and then it's going to shorten. For beginners, you want to start out trying to hit the center of the cue ball so you don't have to worry about all this magical stuff, and also realize that if you don't understand all this magical stuff that happens after you hit the cue ball into the object ball, you're going to feel like your angles and math are off when you may actually be spot on. That's going to cause you to adjust or not have confidence in your bank shots, and then when you adjust, you may actually hit it the right way, and you miss the shot completely. So you may come to find that your angles are on, it's just that you're hitting the cue ball with some English, or you're not understanding the rail system and hitting further down the rail or shorter on the rail. Keep in mind that any English you hit affects the object ball in the opposite way. If left English causes your cue ball come off further this way, then it's going to cause your object ball come off on this side. It's going to have the opposite effect. I'm going to show you the effects of the video, but basically, if you take an object ball, whatever color that needs to be, and you just practice hitting English into this ball, and even hitting it straight so the math is good, you're going to see how the English actually throws the ball in different directions. So, but we're going to cover that in all the videos coming up. So stay with me. I'm going to go over everything I covered in video format, and hopefully that it all becomes clear now that you understand how things work. Alright, what I've done here is I've drawn 3 lines that'd be hard to see. The first line is the black line, which goes from the front of the pocket, aiming at the actual dot or diamond on the table. It's an improper black line that we discussed in the video. If you aim from the front of the pocket to the dot, you will hit early on the rail and miss every single time unless you hit the cue ball improperly. The next line would be the red line, which is the proper ball, or the proper measurement from the front of the pocket to the actual extended dot on the rail. So coming straight up from the rail, if you hit that red line from the front of the pocket, you'll make the ball every time. And then the third line I drew is a yellow line. The yellow line is where you should be measuring from, which is almost the back of the side pocket if you're going to aim at the dot. So here we have a shot coming up showing the black line, which is the incorrect measurement. The correct measurement, once again, is from the back of the pocket to the dot. So it hits early on the rail, obviously. And again, so that you can see. So just remember, if you're going to be aiming at the dot, you need to move it back in the pocket in line with the other dots on the other side. And then here's using the yellow line, like I just said, from the back of the pocket to the dot. This is the proper way to make this bank. But if you do decide to use the front of the pocket, just make sure that you extend that dot out to the front of the line. So here on this, I've put electric tape on, and I'm using the longer width of the table here so that we can see the actual effects of different shots. I've extended the dot on each side, and I've also crossed the sticks there, because right where those sticks cross is going to be the point you measure from to those pieces of tape. That represents the front of the rails. That point right there is where you measure if you're going to be using the front of the rails, in front of the dots there. So here I said when you hit too soft, the angle widens because it absorbs impact. So you can see it goes right past the red tape, which is too long. And again, hitting too soft will cause the ball to go too long. And even just those few inches right there can make or break a shot. And if you hit too hard, it shortens the angle, which means you will hit before that red tape. And the harder you hit that, the further ahead you get of the red tape. So when you hit the ball just right into the tape, you'll hit the other piece of tape. Or pretty close. And so for the next, we're going to go over how English affects the ball. The right English here should shorten, which it did. Having any type of English on the right side of the ball, it will cause you to fall short of where you're trying to hit it to. And hitting it hard with English, it didn't even come close. There's a whole diamond before the red tape down the table. And on the other side, left English makes it longer. As you can see, I hit right in the red tape, but somehow made the ball into the pocket down there. And then left English again, you'll see that it'll go past the tape, because that's what the English does. A whole diamond past. And if we use bottom right, like I was talking about earlier, you can actually cause the ball to almost come straight across. So hitting down for the bottom ball and on the right side can cause you substantially miss a bank. I mean, look at how off you can get. So that's why it's very important that you hit the center of the cue ball. I mean, that one went in the frickin' pocket. And then, as I was talking about, the further you are from a rail, the different effect it has when you make a bank shot. So see, that one was back by the cue ball. Now we're about the middle of the table. And just aiming at that dot and hitting like your medium stroke, the closer that it gets to that rail, the shorter it gets. See how it missed down the table by a few inches? Now watch as it gets closer to that rail. So every time that it gets closer, you have to compensate for this. See? Now it's getting shorter. And when it's right near the rail, it gets even shorter yet. So if you're not actually compensating for this, you know, you get your measurement right, but look how far off that is on a straight-in shot. That's a straight-in bank into the rail. It should hit down by the red tape, but it's off by a whole foot. So you also have to realize that further away will cause it to shorten. So here it is, right up on the rail again, and it's a whole diamond short. It was a straight-in shot. The math says it should have went to the red tape down there, but because of how it comes off, when the cue ball makes impact that close to the rail, it kind of throws it faster. So watch how far down the rail I can actually hit this into straight on before it even gets close to the red tape. And I mean, we're still short by a few inches there, and we're hitting a few inches past where the red tape is. And we're almost aiming at the side pocket here for that one, and we're just a couple inches still short going down the table. So just keep in mind that And here's how English affects balls. So right English, it makes it act as the ball you're hitting has left English on it. So you can see it went a little bit too long. And left English will make the ball seem like it has right English on it, which makes the ball too short. So if you're going to be hitting English and you end up comboing a ball, you're going to run into problems unless you keep these calculations in mind. The easiest thing to do is to just hit the damn cue ball in the center-ish area, hopefully the center, and not have to worry about all these magical effects if you're an average player. You'll see that professional players or better players will actually use the English and these different methods to actually manipulate where the ball goes, and you'll get into that eventually, but for right now you have to understand that how you hit the cue ball actually has a lot of effect on the math involved in trying to do banks. Alright, I did not mean to make the video this long. I was hoping it wouldn't be this long, but there is a lot to cover, and especially trying to explain certain things that I just know by heart. I wanted the average player to be able to understand it, and even though the video is so long, I still probably didn't do as great a job as I could have. So if you have any questions, please feel free to leave comments or get a hold of me. If you liked the video, click like, subscribe, and share the video, and hopefully you learned something today. Thanks for watching.